at this point, we just turn it into a large group discussion. And the funny thing about Zoom is someone has to stay back in the main room. So I've been back in the main room, not part of any conversation. So I'm happy to now join in and hear. So it is a very authentic question from me. What did you learn? What did you not learn? What questions are still present for you? Let's keep it going.
Good question. Start. Oops, sorry,
Okay.
Meryl. You start.
Go ahead. Not at all.
I think it's hysterical because I've said to all of my groups that I hate a vacuum and that I will fill it. So I just feel it's natural for me to just jump right in and fill this vacuum. I will share other people's words, which are that I've shared in my groups. Kristen, is she still there? Shared with Becca and me in our first group, the idea of leading from the side, front, and back, which I very much appreciated, and also wait, which is why am I talking, which I very much appreciate as well. We were just getting to it in our group, but the awareness of what you as a leader in a virtual space would need for your own comfort. I need to have something to look at while I am listening, and so it's very helpful to have people's faces. And I'm recognizing how sparse my wall is, and I would like to engage other people's eyes with something more than just a blank space.
So you're asking for art recommendations?
Oh no, this is, one of the things that I enjoy about being single is that the only art that I have to look at is my own and not anybody else's crappiness.
Fair enough.
Thank you, Meryl, for the suggestion.
So we talked about the 5 love languages. Sorry.
5 levels of languages, is that what you said?
No, the 5 love languages. I don't know if you've ever heard about that. So in 1995, a guy named Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages. And he essentially asserted that there are 5 love languages that individuals we gravitate towards. So the first one is words of affirmation. The next one is acts of service. There's receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. So for words of affirmation, if you're somebody who you need to hear that, that encouragement, you need to hear that positive, talk about your work or about you. Or an acts of service is you like doing things for people, or you like people doing things for you. So and you get it for the rest. And there's it's giving and receiving, so it's both sides of the coin. But we talked about how virtual space really takes away some of that. For example, physical touch. For people who really connect through physical touch, like whether it's reaching out and touching somebody's arm while you're talking to them, it's very limiting. And I liked what Jamie said, which was Jamie talked about how even if you have video, you can see the expressions, etc. But you still, it's like talking to a glass box, and so I think in our last group what we talked about was like, what should we say to people who are gravitating towards this? And I said, don't. That was my best answer for it, which is sad because some of us, Francois was saying, we don't have a choice sometimes to do virtual. But having that human connection, there's nothing really that can replace that. Yeah. And even meeting once in person, even if you have a wide variety of individuals as part of your learning network or your consortium or your community of practice, whatever, just having that one face-to-face meeting boosts engagement, boosts the connection, the personal connection between people in that particular group. It's invaluable, and I say that from experience. Yeah, so
Jamie, can I ask you to talk back to that point for a second, because you said something in our group about John.
Yeah. So we are talking about how, how do you do things like create trust if you're in this kind of medium, which I call what we're trying to do is be in our bodies in a disembodied medium, right? So, how do you build that context of trust and that sense of trust to people? And I mentioned that I've known John for like about 10 years probably, and we've met physically one time. But I will say inside of myself as a person, he's a person I would inherently trust. I inherently look up to in many ways, and respect, and I only met him one time, physically. So it wasn't that, I needed to keep having that interaction in order to build those levels of trust and understanding in him. And I think that somewhere in there is a learning lesson, or many learning lessons, about how then it is that we create trust in people. And how do because I can physically feel I trust him, for example. It's not like a thing like where I'm just saying it out loud. Like I would be like, oh yeah, he is a trustworthy person. He's someone I like, engaging with. But how did I get there if there was no physical interaction? I wasn't in an office space with him all the time. So there's somewhere in there is some knowledge and wisdom about how we can then create relationships and lead other people in a very somatic way, without being physically present.
Yeah. There is a term called limbic resonance, which is when we have our state of being then impacts other people's states of being. And so we can use all the tools of increasing our somatic intelligence to get really intentional about our state of being. And I know my personal experience of John also is that he has a very clear way of being that sometimes vibrating up here level of being can be brought into more calm. And I think it's part of that is that limbic resonance, or people talk about mirror neurons, where younger siblings get better at the sport that their older sibling is doing when they first start it, because they've been watching their older sibling do it, and their brain has been doing it before their body does it. And so we are social beings, and we influence each other without our words often. And so that's just another concept that I think could be really powerful for leaders is, how are you going to physically be present with whomever you're with and influence them? So these comments are really interesting. Thanks, everybody.
I will say thank you.
Sorry, John.
All right, no, go ahead. I'll let Dina, go ahead.
Very quickly, I just put something together because in both groups, I was talking about needing context for people, and being able to see a background environment that's not blank is very helpful to me. But the same thing is true. Like I have a context with Liz and Meryl and John because I've met them all in person. So regardless of the fact that I can't see Meryl's face, I can see Meryl's face, and I can see her physical responses, and just hearing her voice brings me joy. The same thing with Liz and John, that because I have met them once in person, I don't need that context. I have the context that I need.
Oh, Danita.
And Francoise had brought up on our conversation the idea of voice. And
I brought that up too, and I'm very, very attuned to that. So I'm glad you're addressing it.
Yeah, well, I'd be curious what the group has to say per John's comment that, our group intelligence is more than just one person's, but there is some research that actually just getting rid of the video and just being voice to voice can create deeper listening. Voice certainly tone of voice certainly has an impact on especially the interoception. So one of the exercises that I've been exposed to before is, if you just sit there and notice what's happening in your body. If I say, no, like, do you have different visceral interoception to that, or like, yes, 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 that there's, you know, tone and inflection, it's the same word, and those words all mean things in our culture. And so I see voice uses our breathing, which is again part of the lungs, part of that internal voice. Is obviously for me, I'm doing a lot of gesturing for those who aren't on video. Voice is tied for me to also my proprioception. And how I hold myself impacts, you know, actors know this, how you hold yourself and do your breathing impacts the strength and power of your voice. And so I would say voice is key to all of this. So what would others say?
I will say that when you were saying no, my puppy popped his head up.
I would agree.
What am I doing?
I think so. I'll say that when I heard Karen's voice, because obviously we can't see her on video, there's a tone in her voice that made me immediately feel like she has something important to tell me. I don't know how to communicate that any other way. It's like, okay, I have something important to learn from her, and that's all from tone of voice. Don't know how that happens in your brain. But
it's the bass in my voice.
Yeah, it could be. I have no idea, but it's obviously a somatic something, you know, in me that, yeah, like I need to listen to her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Although I'd still love to see your face.
It's very confident. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that assessment, Jamie. It's a confidence, you know.
So one of the things I mentioned in I think 2 of the 3 groups was my basic training in Toastmasters helped me to be much more aware of voice, but also body language in terms of trying to communicate a particular message. So that, and how it connects to leadership is, in order to portray or convey leadership, you definitely want both your voice and your words and your body language to be in sync, so that it all conveys the same message in an authentic way, and not in some, you know, let's do this gesture for that message or something else, but really in a more authentic approach. So I think the Toastmasters training gave me that awareness, and I'm still practicing.
I think the practicing never ends, right? Yeah.
I just wanted to say something really briefly. I think it was Meryl that was talking about your puppy reacting to Becca's tone of voice, and I had been thinking just before that about, I'm sitting here and my dog's here, and I was thinking, you know, animals can really give you some good feedback about those things like tone of voice and also just your physical presence as well. If you're messaging, and it made me wonder, like, if I had to give a important presentation, maybe I should practice it with my dog, because then I could see if she remains engaged based on how my tone of voice is. That's a good feedback, you know, because they're not listening to words. They're reacting to your body language, your body presence, and your tone of voice. And yeah, they learn a few words here and there, but it's just it's a much more it's a feedback maybe mechanism to use.
I love it. And yeah, thank you all. And I guess I'll try and bring us to a close, as much as I want to stay on, just in case people, I know at least one person has to drop off here. Yeah, I guess I took a page of notes here too, so thank you. I feel much more comfortable, and thank you for the compliments as well. Well received. I guess maybe what I might add to the conversation is, as we talk about pets and body language and sort of instant feedback, I've also seen this research, you may have seen it too. I think they did it in an elementary school or a middle school, where they put the exact same plant, 2 copies of the same plant at the end of a major hallway, and one of them, they asked the students, and they had sound giving nothing but compliments to that plant for a whole school year. And then the other plant, they did nothing but they bullied it with the language they used. They yelled at it, they said nasty things to it, and they played sound files that said nasty things to that plant in like a glass enclosure. And at the end of the year, the one plant, it wasn't quite dead, but it definitely didn't look anywhere near as healthy as the other plants. And I'll assume that they watered it the same and all that, but it still makes for a good story that maybe there's also not only immediate feedback, but also this long-term feedback about all that. I think, don't they say that most of our body's made up of water, and water, all elements are more energy than they are anything physical. They're more energy than mass. So yeah, there's something about that embodiedness that has that energy level to it too. So Becca, any closing words from you before we hang up?
No, thank you for your time and for listening. I shouldn't say no, because clearly I'm talking right now. Yes. I just appreciate everyone contributing so much and staying so engaged. And I've seen some other things similar to that, John, around energy and water. Actually, they froze water after giving it different messages, and were able to study the crystalline structure, and it changed. And that was really interesting. So I look forward. One person asked for resources, so I will try to put together a list of a few, and maybe you all have others, and it could be, again, a communal knowledge transfer. And I will look forward to the continued conversation and hopefully seeing some of you in person sometime.
Sounds good. Thank you all. Take care.